here we are, episode 9. One more, and we've reached double digits. So looking forward to next week's, but we got to focus on this one's first. So here we are with episode 9 in the 4thandlong podcast. We're going to talk about week 10 that was. We had a trade deadline. We got to discuss a few things, and we had a question from a fellow GM. So we'll hopefully answer everything that kind of gets tied into the trade. And then we'll see how much time we got left for a couple predictions for Week 11 in the NFL and the week that is for us in 4thandlong. So, as always, Randy's here. Randy, how'd you think Week 10 go, and anything you got to say here?
Not too much. I'm glad I got back in the win column, but moving forward here. Only got a few games left, and then it's playoff time. So. Stretch run is upon us, and can't make trades anymore, so waiver wire is pretty thin, so you're stuck with who you got now, pretty much.
Well, we'll let you kick off the matchup of the week that was.
Okay, I'm fairly certain you might guess the same one, because it was a real doozy. The Clueless versus Shelley told me to, and of course this was the highest scoring matchup, the two highest scoring teams. And it was also reasonably close. Clueless ended up with just shy of 148, and Chili told me to just shy of 140. That's a pretty good matchup on any ticket, but especially this late in the season, and they got pretty decent records to boot. Ended up coming down to the Monday Night Football game. Kicker Robbie Gould ended up kicking enough field goals in the first half to win the game. But, anytime it comes down to one kicker on Monday Night Football, you know it was close to the end. I guess just a main point to make, obviously when the points are this high, you'll have a lot of players with a lot of points, but there were 5 players in this whole matchup that had 25-plus points, and there were 5 players in this matchup with less than 10, so that just kind of shows almost everyone at least showed up to pull their weight, and like I said, 5 guys really pulled their weight and then some, including, I must say, a really good game from a running back who yours truly had chosen to have a good game this week, so I'm pretty happy about that one. David Johnson had a good week like I predicted.
Yeah, well, hey, it was, I can see where you decided to go with that one. There were some good numbers, and I know it did come down to a kicker, and sometimes you never know with the offenses that are going at it. Sometimes it's better for the kicker to be on one of those matchups, and Gould ended up pulling away, and that's with a -3 from the defense there, so he had to claw back enough to get in that position. But once again, Jordan Howard kind of lets him down. Only 3.2 points there from a running back that I think is, I don't know what the plan is there with him, but his numbers just seem to be all over the map, and he recently acquired, and we'll get to him, Johnson, but chose to bench him, and Johnson had a way better night, and that could have projected him or pushed him forward a little bit more there, so no, it definitely was an interesting matchup. Like you say, it came down to Monday night, and we like seeing those. However, that was not my matchup of the week.
Okay.
Mine was global warming versus old dirty bastards. This came down to Sunday night football. Global started off with almost about a 40-point projection to win, and probably thinking pretty good. And after Thursday night, did that not drastically change with what Pittsburgh did to Carolina? Ben put up 45, Boswell put up 13, and the defense put up 15, and Jake also had Funchess, but only 3.2 from that regard. But again, putting up massive points to say, okay, those points are in the bank now, come get me, Ryan. So it made things interesting going into Sunday. I mean, Big Ben, like what an unreal Thursday night outing from him, and I'll get to him in a little bit. But Jake's downfall was he has to play 2 tight ends, and he's been doing it for the last couple weeks here. And combined, they put up 1.9 points between 2 players. That kind of hurts him a little bit there. I mean, the matchup was so close. that if had one of those guys maybe gotten a touchdown, maybe a few more yards, that could have made things different. And we can look at the same way for global warming too. But Ertz definitely came to play on Sunday night, and Ryan had two players, Jeffrey and Ertz. And Ertz seemed to be the lucky recipient of the love, and he had 145 yards with two touchdowns to get 26 points, and obviously that was enough to propel him over Jake and the old dirty bastards. But man, did that come down to the last 3 minutes there, and we were watching it thinking, oh boy, I think Ryan's going to come back, and Ertz just kept catching the ball. But the reason I give it was such a back and forth. I mean, you have Thursday night from Jake, a big Sunday during the day from Ryan, and then of course a Sunday night from Ryan as well. So yeah, it was a good matchup.
Well, yeah, I agree. That one was actually closer than the one I picked, and you're right, it was a good close one. I guess just another comment. Obviously, I was watching the Sunday night game too, and but that second touchdown for Ertz, that was a well defended play, and if that ball gets batted away or deflected on the way in by the defender or something, we're talking about like the biggest upset of the year just on that play, because that play alone is like 7 or 8 points, and yeah, that was the difference, was 6 points. So yeah, that one could have definitely, that one play that was very close definitely could have been the difference in this matchup.
Well, and we also were watching, and I mean, the play before that, Aguilar ran to the side, and I thought he was going to get in. He ended up getting stopped on like the 2 yard line, and that could have made things interesting. But hey, it was a great matchup. So, what was your worst matchup of the week?
Well, this one we might agree on, although you may go a different route than I do on this one. But I'm going with the Devil Raiders versus the Bottom Feeders, and this is just for the opposite reason of my matchup of the week. Is that this is the lowest scoring matchup, as neither one of these guys reached 100. In fact, Bottom Feeders needed a big Monday night from Breda just to get to 90. I had mentioned about how there were 5 players with 25 plus points in the previous matchup. This matchup had 4 players of 10 points or more, and 2 players of 20 points or more. So that's pretty much like that's it. And and there was also a minus defense on this end as well for Kelly and the Devil Raiders. If it weren't for Breda and for Mahomes, even though Mahomes had a down week, like I believe you predicted that one. Mm-hmm. Those two guys combined for literally half of Bottom Feeder's points.
Yeah.
So, Bottom Feeder still got the win, but he didn't exactly have to beat anybody to prove it. And just kind of like what I mentioned in the rankings there, he kind of got lucky with the matchup, because there were a couple other guys, you and me included, that would have left him in the dust if they were playing us.
Oh, yeah, well, and you look at it too, and Kelly ended up with 70 points, and Beckham had a big Monday night with 2 touchdowns for almost 20 points. So let's say Beckham does what you've been calling him out for all year and gets like 5 points. Drop another 50. He's at like 55 points, like just a terrible outing. I've been talking to Kelly off the record, and he was saying he's just been frustrated because guys are hurt. Speaking of injuries, he will be losing Cooper Kupp to an ACL.
Yeah, that one hurts, because that's another big playmaking guy that he had.
So I think
had the potential to help carry the weight.
Yeah, well, I think as we all know and would probably assume, I think at this rate Kelly's probably looking to just try to salvage maybe a couple wins if he's able to, and maybe go from 12th up a little bit to get a little closer early in the rounds for drafting. But it's been a tough go, and guys just haven't performed for him. That's for sure.
Well, I'll be talking a bit about the draft in a little bit here, and maybe give him a little bit of hope for next year.
Sounds good. Mine was I'm going to take a different route again. I guess we're just not we're looking at things from different angles here. But the worst matchup of the week, I think, was myself versus Misfits. I just think this matchup was over before it even started, and I'm not trying to come across cocky like that, but there's just not a lot of playmaking ability on Nigel's team this season. It seems guys aren't wanting to perform. I mean, mind you, he did have Watson and Lindsay on the bye, but I don't think that would have made much of a difference. I mean, you look down the roster here. He's got, he had Torrey Smith with a 0. Smith, the running back from Atlanta, with 2.6. Hines from Indy, 2.2. Gano only had 3 points because he only had 3-point afters in that Carolina-Pittsburgh game. Yeah. The only saving grace was Rivers in Green Bay, and actually 8 of his 9 roster spots were below projection, actually produced lower than projected points. Yeah. Only his defense was above that, which is amazing. Sometimes your defense are usually lower because the more points scored puts them down. I was projected to win by 34 points, and I actually doubled that up. I actually won by 67 points, so almost pretty much doubled up on the points, and just not much to really talk about here, I think. James White, from my perspective, somehow Tennessee lost to New England, but James White is normally good for another 13 to 15 points, and he only had 2.6. So that puts me above, could normally put me in above a different point category as well. So, we talk about the low point totals and why guys aren't performing, but I was debating between my matchup on yours, actually, because again, just the point spread is so drastic. It's just not in the category of a good matchup. So that's why I chose to do this one. So.
Okay.
But moving on, we have to get back to the positives. The player of the week. Who did you have for Week 10?
Well, you mentioned him a lot, and this is Big Ben. Big Ben Roethlisberger for the old dirty bastards. 328 yards, 5 touchdowns, 45.32 points. Obviously on Thursday night, started off with a huge bang, kind of set the tone for, just pretty much just saying to global warming, this is not going to be an easy one. This matchup was projected to be a 129-89 blowout, and when the projection is 30 points off difference, they're predicting a huge blowout, but that 45 points made it a game, and like you said, it came down to Ertz's second touchdown pretty much. I guess also by extension, Big Ben's huge game contributed to several other big games throughout the league, including some more for the Dirty Bastards, who I believe he has Boswell on his team and the Steelers defense, I think. But anyways, you have Antonio Brown. He had a big night. Juju Smith-Schuster had a big night. James Conner, he didn't have as huge a night as he could have, but still had a pretty decent night. Boswell, the kicker, got to kick lots. The Steelers defense. Now, of course, you can say that quarterbacks have nothing to do with the defense, but it's pretty easy to keep the other team out of your own end zone if you've got the ball the whole game, and that was kind of the point there. And even the 2 tight ends, Vance McDonald and Jesse James, they each had a touchdown. There was tons of love to go around, and Big Ben was the one dishing it out.
Yeah, he's my player of the week as well. I did talk to him about him earlier on there, and I'm not going to say too much more because we can move on here, but just to let you know, that was the 4th time in his career that he's had a perfect passer rating. His QBR was 158.3 and 88% completion rate throughout the game. Only 1 sack. And Carolina's defense can come at you, so he had a really good game, and he made Carolina look pretty bad. And I think without that Thursday night performance, I don't think Jake's in the same cushion or that potential to win as what he was against a team like Global Warming. So hats off to Big Ben. Bus of the week. I'll take this one quickly here.
Sure.
You touched on it a bit, and I am going to throw in a little note here. I did say Mahomes would be the bust of the week, and he actually only had 21.5 fantasy points, and I predicted that he would be less than 20, so not too far off from that. So just a little interesting note there. But it's funny because last week I said Kareem Hunt would be the player of the week. I actually have him as the bust of the week. Now I know 9.6 is sounds better than probably 1.8 or 0. But if you look at it, 16 attempts at rushing for only 71 yards, and they played in like Arizona, who they give up the second most fantasy points to the running back position, and Kareem Hunt doesn't even get a touchdown. So, when you have the opportunity to have an elite running back like global warming does, and now, as we're going to talk in a little bit, without Connor, this could make things interesting for him moving forward. So we'll see how this goes. But didn't cost him the win, because he did get the win, but it definitely doesn't get him into those comfort zones that I think Ryan's used to. So that's why I have Kareem Hunt in the bust of the week.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense as well, particularly with how you picked last week too. And it's not just about how it's not just points; it's what they're expected to do. But my bust of the week kind of has a little bit of both ways of looking at it. He played poorly, and I was expecting more from him, and that's Andy Dalton of the Devil Raiders. I had mentioned him that game was the worst game of the week from my point of view, and Andy Dalton was certainly a big part of that. I believe he only had 8.9 or something like that points. I was expecting a bit of a shootout against the Saints. I believe I had made that call on the podcast, and the way I figured, even if the Saints got ahead of Cincinnati, usually what happens with that, a quarterback will get they'll end up getting somewhere around 50 targets or 50 attempts. They may not complete them all, and they might get picked off a few times, but they're going to throw the ball so often, they're bound to get nice soft coverages and don't give up the big plays, so they'll get 10, 20 yards on every pass, and they'll fantasy-wise they'll actually have good numbers. But the Saints had the ball so often that Dalton only had 20 attempts, which for a normal game when you're winning is low. Mm-hmm. And really that just amounted to next to nothing. He didn't even reach 200 yards. He didn't get it was just a bad game all around, and in one where I was expecting him to do a lot better. I mean, I don't think he'd be able to I don't think he's at the level where he can sling it with Drew Brees, but like I said, there's at least garbage time points to consider, and he didn't even get anything that way.
Well, that's interesting, yeah, because that's a name I haven't even heard, and we haven't really talked about Andy Dalton, and it's interestingly enough, because Cincinnati's been kind of under that radar. They've had a few good weeks and a few bad weeks, but there's potential there against New Orleans to maybe make some plays, but without your top receiver and A.J. Green playing, it kind of changes the dynamics of what Andy Dalton, I think, can do. He's kind of known more for that stretch ball to those guys, not so much of a dunk master over the middle, right? Just a little flip plays. But it really comes down to it in fantasy. When the quarterback doesn't perform, that's a big chunk of your points that you should have got that you don't know that you're not going to get anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. So no, I can see that too. But so that's kind of a quick recap on Week 10.
Let's get to the trades. Everyone wants to hear about the trades.
Yeah, and we'll get to those next week. I'm just kidding. But let's start with a smaller one, and then we'll get into that what Ryan announced as a blockbuster. So let's start with the first trade. That was global warming received Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Clueless from the trade received running back Kerryon Johnson. So, Randy, what was your take on that trade? What did you think about that one?
Well, the trade, I believe this was a setup for the next trade to happen. Mm-hmm. Mainly just because Ryan, global warming, didn't want to start Stafford again, but I think he was realizing that the big blockbuster trade that we're going to talk about in a sec, that might not be completed in time. So why don't we hurry up and just get one that I can play for this week, because I'm sick of looking at Matt Stafford. So we ended up getting Fitzpatrick, thinking that he would be able to play one good week for him. Obviously didn't happen. like you had mentioned, he wasn't a big fan of starting on Johnson. I guess he didn't think he was, well, obviously he had three great running backs. You can't start a fourth one, but with the bye weeks, you could have at least put him in there once or twice. Uh, the other thing is because, well, I guess he had traded, um, uh, yeah, yeah, like this, just to get rid of your one running back that you don't need just for a backup quarterback. My verdict on this one, I believe Clueless won the trade just because, just because of what Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't do that week and what he hasn't been able to do since like week 3. He hasn't really been that magic. Everybody talked about Fitz magic at the beginning of the year. He hasn't done anything since. I mean, Jameis Winston kind of won the job back and then gave it back again. So it's not much of an offensive output in Tampa Bay. So anytime you're trading that, a player from Tampa Bay, it's not really going to get you anywhere.
Yeah. No, I just the only other side notes I have is obviously at this point, prior to the next one, Ryan needed a better quarterback than Stafford, like you mentioned, and so he had to make room for him. And I mean, to get rid of another running back, he already had the likes of Hunt, Connor, and Gordon, so that was a player he could move about. To acquire that. Allen, obviously from Clueless, he was looking, in my opinion, for running back insurance, as Howard is just like we said, is just up and down and not performing. So maybe a better opportunity to increase his running back depth. So final note on this one, I think it's a decent trade for both of them at the time, and there was no draft pick trades involved. So I think there's zero future implications for either team. So it's kind of a build for now and see how it shakes out. So it wasn't a bad trade, but then the next one is the big ticket. This was the meal ticket, and for all of you who didn't know, we'll do our best to break it down. Global warming received quarterback Patrick Mahomes, wide receiver Tyler Boyd, and a fourth-round pick from the Dylan and the bottom feeders. And Dylan received quarterback Matt Stafford, running back Connor from Pitt, wide receiver Golden Tate, and second round pick from Ryan. And because that was an uneven player trade, Dylan decided to drop tight end Jordan Reed. Now, Dylan did have a question. I think he wanted to evaluate the trade before the trade actually went through. So we're kind of going to answer your question here now, Dylan, and we're going to break it down the best we can and give you our thoughts. So we'd be curious to see the feedback on what you think. So, Randy, let's just start with Ryan's side of the trade. Let's look at Ryan's side.
Okay.
So, for me, I think obviously we knew he had Matt Stafford. He made a simple trade to. Was it an upgrade with Fitzpatrick? I think you kind of said, well, no, not really, and maybe this was the setup to move around. We don't know, but I mean, he did recently require it, so this is an MVP type upgrade from Fitzpatrick when getting Mahomes on the season this kid's having. It allows for another security roster spot outside of his running backs. Have always been like those security blankets for him, like we spoke about. So now he's got a quarterback position too that's been putting up major points, and unless something drastically changes, he's got another roster spot that can do some damage. He's got 324 fantasy points this season for Mahomes, that is. And now you're going to pair that with the likes of Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. So lots riding on KC, but as we all know, Kareem also catches out of the backfield. So look for doubling up on those points. Tyler Boyd seems to be an up and down, but I think he can get more options now or more looks if AJ still stays out. But you just called Dalton the bust of the week, so we'll see how Boyd's numbers can increase. But I think Boyd is more of a flex option for Ryan at this point. I think it was just pieces that had to be moved in the trade. And the fourth round is decent. It still allows him to pick up 2 picks in the fourth round. And he's obviously got the likes of, he's going to have a tough time deciding who he's going to keep. So he has to get an early buyback. So I think fourth is pretty fair for that side of the ball. To go any further, I don't know if Ryan would have taken that because it just goes too far down the depth chart before he gets that double pick back. Because he's going to lose a second round where a lot of guys get that top four core, so he's going to lose out on that. So we'll see how that plays out for the draft. But before I get to my final notes, I'll just let you hear what you have to say about Ryan's side of the trade.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, he needed a number one quarterback. Uh, even uh, even if Mahomes slows down as towards the end of the year, I think he'd be more than happy with 20, 21, 25 points a game because Matt Stafford has just been really disappointing for him and has been really a crutch for him, really. Like it's really been a bump in his road. He's had to rely on these three running backs, and if any of them got hurt, he'd be done. Fortunately, he's managed to win a lot of games and stay in the hunt and stay right on your heels. Now, at the very least, what would Mahomes' basement be? 20 points, 15 points? That's still better than what Stafford would do most weeks. Of course, he had to give up a great young running back, but he's got two in the stable already, and Mark Ingram, sitting on the bench all year. The bye weeks, I think this is the second last bye week, or maybe the last bye week of the season coming up here. So the bye weeks, you don't have to worry about Golden Tate. A good talent, but he's starting on a new team and didn't get a whole lot of looks there on Sunday night. So at least in the short term, he didn't give up his best wide receiver. And like you said, just because he's got the extra player that's going the other way, just to kind of even it out, he kind of took a little bit of a hit with the draft picks. But like you said, it's just 2 rounds. It's still early enough. He can still make up with that. He got what he wanted out of it, so nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So that's kind of Ryan's side. So now we'll look at Dylan's side. So Dylan, I think, dropped obviously his quarterback value big time. He now has gone from Patrick Mahomes to Matt Stafford, and you have to remember Dylan was the guy who took a chance and drafted Mahomes at a decent round. Now I can't remember the round, but when everybody was snagging quarterbacks, Dylan took a chance on the kid, and it's paid off. So curious to see what and Dylan, you're obviously asking about it and listening. Your roster, you did trade away your previous first overall pick in David Johnson. Now you draft a young quarterback who's obviously got elite caliber talent. If you look at the rest of your core, would Mahomes not have been a great player to keep since we are in a keeper league? So just I'll pose a question back to Dylan there. I think I'm kind of curious as to why that was decided there. But you never know. We'll see what comes off of playoffs if he waivers if he decides to not stay with Stafford. Maybe there's better matchups, but we'll see about that. Obviously, the big improvement here for Dylan is the acquisition of Connor, who's having a huge running back season without the likes of Le'Veon Bell now moving forward. And we can touch on that in a little bit quickly, but there's no more pressure there for the potential him to come back and ruin Connor's numbers. We've been talking about that for 10 weeks. So now Dylan can say, okay, he's mine, everything's kosher, and I don't have to worry about that. And the next closest running back total on his team is Breda from San Fran, and that's still 80 points behind Connor. So just to show you the value that Dylan got in that trade, I would imagine he's most likely going to keep Connor for a future keeper. You did touch quickly on Golden Tate there. So he's found a new home in Philly. Didn't get much love there on Sunday night. I think they're kind of slowly learning the system with him and giving him time. But we'll see how he does there. I think he would have gotten better fantasy numbers had he stayed in Detroit, just because Stafford used him as a go-to option. But I still think this is a slight increase in Dylan's wide receiver value. And the second round pick here, that'll be good for Dylan, depending on if A, he makes the playoffs, B, doesn't he? He knows he's going to steal Ryan's pick, so he's going to get 2 in the second round, which can help him really build a strong core for next year. So I think the trade was good there, so I'd like to see what you have to say about Dylan's side of the ball.
Well, I think from Dylan's side, at least as far as trading away Mahomes, and I know it leaves a big hole for him, this might be a trade for next year as well as this year, because the way he's thinking about it, I'm giving up one of my surefire keepers for next year, but I'm getting one in return. Like you said, maybe he thinks he can pick up a quarterback off waivers and scratch and scrape through. Maybe he thinks that James Conner's trajectory is going in the right direction, whereas Mahomes is probably going down. Obviously it's not plummeting to the point where he's not worth anything, but and I think the other big one, because the other big reason why I call it an extra trade is because he's getting that extra second rounder. So he's going to have his keepers, and he's going to end up he's hoping he's going to be in the same situation that global warming is in this year, where he's got the stacked team where he can pick guys, because, he's got to be thinking, with global warming having all these great players, he can only keep 2 of them. So that means, likely someone, well, probably not Kareem Hunt, but you've got Hunt, Tyreek Hill, you've got Melvin Gordon, and now you got Patrick Mahomes. 2 of those guys are going right back into the draft next year. And that's going to push the depth of every other player down a few spots. So he's off. So I'm thinking Dylan is probably thinking, I'm going to get that much better of a draft option for next year. And then, while, like you said, he's given up a lot at the quarterback position, he might be giving up a lot of the hype from the first 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, because he only got 21 points this week, like you said. He might not get to 35 or 40 points for the rest of the year, and if he does, and if Connor can keep doing well, then it's a good, that he wins the trade. But my final verdict on this one is that both teams win somewhat, but I think for this season, global warming wins it even more, just because he solidified the one position that was holding him back, if there was a position.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to add in there, I think that the trade favors Ryan a little bit better for a push for this year, because Dylan still is in a playoff spot, so that's why I'm giving the trade favor to Ryan. But however, I think from a future perspective, I think Dylan has some really good options to move forward and build over the next year. So that was it definitely was a blockbuster. I think it caught a lot of people off guard. There was a fair bit of chatter about it, and obviously we took a lot of time to break it down. But it was a good one, and that was kind of the recap of our trade deadline. So there was a few moves this year, not too many, not a lot of draft pick trading involved this year. Either some guys didn't want to trade. You did ask me that question a few weeks ago about the trades and the drafts. I just think, sometimes it works for people, sometimes it doesn't. And it's just however you end up is where you're going to be drafting. You got to make the most of it. So
still a good trade, and a good season for trades. I like some of these big trades. I think there's definitely a lot more action in this league than the other leagues I'm in. So keep up the good work for next year, guys.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. So we'll see. It's just too bad we couldn't incorporate pre-draft trades. Maybe there's a way around that. If we did a live in-person draft, we kind of know who's what, and we can work around that maybe one day. But for now, we got to wait for the season. So anything else you want to talk about trade deadline before we move on to a couple other items before we close this off?
That's all I got to say about the trades.
Okay. So obviously last week we talked about Le'Veon Bell and where that was going to end up and everything like that. So obviously we got the news this week that he is not reporting and will be ineligible to return for the remainder of the season. Now, my thoughts on that, on how I think this is going to play out. So just, we haven't really heard your side too much on it. This isn't Q&A, I'm just discussing it because obviously Connor was involved and now we know the process there. So that's, but Randy, where do you think the future is for Le'Veon Bell and the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, I don't think it is with the Steelers. I've heard some rumors that the guys were pretty happy to have them clean out his locker. I've heard quite a few of the professionals and some of the some of the guys who get paid by ESPN and those guys they get paid to talk about this sort of thing, and they were running him down pretty good that he wasn't very good for the locker. So, but I still think, and there's a lot of discussion about where will he go. Will if he's asking for too much, would owners would they mark him with the same brand as Kaepernick, where okay, no one's going to sign him, and they'll all this collusion talk and all that. So I don't think they will. I think he's way too good of a player. Even if the owners do collude to not sign him, someone's going to break that path and say, you know what, he's going to make us that much better, because there are coaches and GMs on the hot seat. There's tons of them out there, and they would love to have this. Well, look, we brought in Le'Veon Bell. We're doing whatever we can to win, and there's all kinds of incentive to bring him in, even just to make it look good. And who cares how much it costs? And it's not like he's got injury trouble. He's been healthy all year. He's not like my boy Dez, who showed up out of shape and pretty much ripped his heel right off in the first practice or whatever. And he's going to be good to go next year. And as long as he goes to a place that treats him good, and as long as he appreciates the fresh start and has a good old line behind him, he'll do very well.
Yeah, I think half of my prediction is moving forward. I think I said he wouldn't play for them this year. I think he's done, and I think they're probably going to be moving on from him. I think their hands are tied. And again, looping back to Connor, you can't predict the future on what Connor will do, but based on what he has done, you got to feel pretty good if you're Pittsburgh and say, okay, well, hey, if we were really hurting, maybe we'd do everything to get you back here. But we got another pony who's doing just as good, who is younger, is cheaper. So, yeah, have fun elsewhere, I think. So, sorry for Jerry this year, Man Bear Pig. I mean, that's tough when you keep a guy of that talent who doesn't play. It does dictate or change the way any of this could have gone the whole year. But that's fantasy, and that's why we play it. But hold on to him, Jerry. You never know where he'll end up. But Randy, moving forward to week 11, let's just touch base on what you think will be matchup of the week, and then I think we'll talk about some games maybe to watch. We won't go too much into depth unless you want to add in player of the week, or I'll let you dictate the flow for week 11 predictions here.
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked me about game of the week, because I think everyone should be watching this one. This is Screaming Beavers versus Global Warming, and this is 1 and 2 in the NFC, so this will likely decide who wins the division. And if you happen to win, if the Screaming Beavers pull it out, I'm pretty sure that guarantees you first overall in the league. So there's a lot riding on this. I mean, just look at the position by position matchup. Drew Brees versus Patrick Mahomes. What a matchup that'll be. Cooks and Brown matchup that. And Mixon versus Hunt and Gordon. That's another one of those great running back matchups we've talked about before. Ertz has a bit of an advantage over McDonald, but you know what? McDonald had a great game. If Big Ben lights it up again, maybe he'll keep up with it. Your flex players are Sterling Shepard and Mark Ingram. That's pretty good. That's still pretty good flex, especially when you look at how top heavy the starters are. And then obviously the kickers and the defenses are all pretty evenly matched there. But man, this is going to be quite a great game, even though they're showing an 11-point projected difference. I think this game will be a lot closer than that. Most of that difference is the tight end separation. And a lot of these players are playing on Monday night when the Chiefs visit the Rams. So, stay up late on Monday to watch this one. It's going to be a doozy.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a tilt, and that's my matchup of the week, too. I think, obviously, this could be a battle for first overall. Ryan won our first matchup in week 2. He beat me by 5 points, and that was 133 to 128. And that was without Mahomes. So just going to show these rosters have the potential to explode. But since that loss, I've been on an 8-game win streak, and here we are. Right back to face Ryan. So looking forward to this one. I know he is too, and he's got some recent newly acquired blood that we just spoke about. So
Yeah.
that KC LA Rams game is going to be a tilt, and I hope it favors me over him.
See you. I hope you guys are peaking pretty good back and forth because I know he mentioned on the Facebook page there he's kind of sick of being in the number 2 spot in the rankings for the whole season. He wants to leapfrog you in the number 1 spot. So yeah, are you gonna let him take it, or are you gonna not without a fight? I imagine.
Well, I can only do what I can do, but it's too bad New England's on the bye. But I like Shepard in the matchup versus Tampa Bay. The only downside is I'm looking at my defense, and I got the Rams in there, and he's got 3 KC players. So who knows? Maybe the Rams defense shut all 3 of his players down. I would enjoy that, because the other option is to play the KC's defense. But then again, I'm hurting my own team because I have Gurley and Cooks.
Yeah, that's how you gotta go with it. You gotta roll the dice sometimes.
Yep. So this is going to be one. But there's a few. This is that's the one I chose for matchup of the week. But I'd like everybody to know as well. There's an AFC tilt here that can move some stuff. And yes, it's not maybe the best records between each other. But Clueless and Jägermeister, this is going to be an interesting one as well. There's 3-point separation. You're in that 8th spot, but you look below. You got Texas Walker and Old Dirty going at it 5 and 7. This is an opportunity for you to put some pressure on Jake, Cody, and Dylan potentially if you're able to pull off that win against Clueless. So there's a couple matchups here that I think are going to be interesting. But as I'm on the page right now, I just would like to announce to everybody that myself, Alan, and Ryan have officially clinched playoff spots.
Yeah, good for you guys. Yeah, you're in.
So that means
you're in it to win it.
5 more are up for grabs. 5 more are up for grabs. As we sit, those would go to the Bears at number 4, Texas Walker number 5, the Bottom Feeders number 6, Old Dirty Bastards 7, and Jägermeister closing it out at 8. So that's kind of how this playoff picture is shaping up. We are going into week 11. There are 3 weeks left before playoff starts.
Oh yeah,
lots of movement.
Feel like the playoffs, anyways, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's getting tight out there, and like I say, you're in the 8th spot, but you have the potential to slow down a 2 seed here. So there's going to be a few good, and plus you've had some good separation games. Obviously, you broke the record in our league with a 102 victory, and you just had the blowout of the week again with a 71-point victory. So interestingly enough, the 8th spot, but Jägermeister's coming alive a little bit here. The Bears look to bounce back against a weak man Bear Pig to kind of keep them in maybe that 4 spot. We have a battle of who doesn't want to be last with Devil Raiders and Misfits. Shelly told me to in the Bottom Feeders. That one's a 16-point differential, but hey, you never know how that'll play out. And then another kind of close tilt is Texas and Old Dirty. So these next few are going to matter big time here. But yeah, I'm looking forward to going at it with Ryan. I can't let him beat me twice. So we'll hopefully get the win. I was hoping Jake would have beat him. And then when we played this matchup, I could potentially still hold on to the number 1 spot. But Ryan did what he needed to do, and I'm looking forward to it. But that's matchup of the week predictions for week 11. Anything else you want to quickly chat about, or we're kind of running out of time here?
No, just to quickly mention, obviously watch that Chiefs and Rams game on Monday night, but there's a good NFC North matchup with the Vikings and the Bears. That game will decide.
Oh, we're having technical difficulties here.
No, sorry, that's okay. I just mentioned the Vikings and the Bears.
Okay, yep. That one looks good. 2 9-1 teams going at it on Monday night. That should be a good one. I'm just looking across the board here. Green Bay, Seattle tomorrow night. What do you? Those are usually kind of entertaining. Anything you think coming out of that one?
Not really. I think there'll be a lot of talk about the two quarterbacks, but as teams, they are shadows of their former glorified selves. So I think this might be one of those boring Thursday night games that we've seen more than a few times in the past.
Hey, and you know what? One other thing here, and I like putting you on the spot because I think you're a little bit smarter than me. Um, what do you think about the NFL doing these Mexico games? They decided to do KCLA in Mexico City. However, the turf was so shitty and players did not want to play due to potential injuries. They decided that they're moving the game back to LA. Um, why do you think they go to places where they know the field is not going to be sustainable to the caliber that they want? And two, Randy, why not come back to Canada for NFL Canada Series again?
That's a good question. As far as the Canada part, I think I think they were having attendance problems in the last little bit. Now, of course, they always sent the Buffalo Bills up there, and the Bills, well, they sucked for a long time. Um, I guess the big thing is maybe if they went to a different city, but Toronto football fans are. I don't even know if they like football in that town because like they don't show up to watch the Argonauts. They don't show up to watch the NFL. And obviously, Mexico City is such a large city as well. They obviously get enough people. They appreciate professional football coming to that place. As far as the field being in rough shape, that's too bad because I know they have played there many times before. Yeah, yes. I think especially with Los Angeles gaining not just one but two NFL teams just like that, I think they wanted to make sure there weren't going to be attendance problems. So they kind of do same thing they do always sending Jacksonville to London, right?
Yeah, no, it's just too bad because, if you're KC, the way I'm looking at it, if you're KC, you think you're a neutral ground, but now you're going back to LA, and you're playing an LA opponent.
Yeah.
So I can get that, but you're both 9-1. You don't want to put yourself in a position where your elite guys are going to get hurt because there's some little taco cart that made. Oh no, that's too soon. Okay. But no, it's just too bad. It would be nice if they can come back to Canada and maybe switch it up to different cities. I mean, BC has a dome. I think Investors Group. I mean, I don't know. Is that terrible of a field? They couldn't do it there. Maybe Minnesota. I doubt Minnesota would ever leave, but you know what I mean. Maybe you can get some of those other crappy teams with shitty attendance to come up here. But I think you're right. They only did Buffalo to Toronto because it's not too far. So. But yeah, a few games, exciting times. Week 11 moving forward, going to be some tilts. We'll see what the power rankings bring next week. We see how the playoff, maybe more guys lock up playoff positions. Who knows? But that's kind of it for us for the Week 10 recap. And we will chat at you guys. And again, Dylan, thanks for the question. Anybody else wants to ask, please pose. Every time I will post the link. We'll remind you guys that questions we can do them, and next year I think we're going to try to get some other guys on the line here as well. So we're moving. This is our first time, and we're enjoying it. Hope you guys are too.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Okay, bye.
See ya.